I heard from a member of the Bundestag, which is the German parliament. He and I were talking the other day, and he mentioned to me that the Ukrainians had sold 2 of these very expensive, sophisticated French 155 millimeter Caesar howitzers. They had sold them to Russia. So France donated them to Ukraine so that Ukraine could fight the war. The Ukrainian underworld took control of them and sold them to Russia. So now Russia has them. Russia is examining them in their weapons manufacturing plants so that they can see what advantage they can make of perhaps modifying their own weapons designs. When I heard this from the member of the Bundestag, I thought, well, let me just check this out. Sure enough, there were articles. At first, I found them in the Bulgarian press. I was recently doing an interview with Bulgaria. It's a very interesting country, and they do some good reporting on both sides of the war. And so there definitely is verification that the 2 highly advanced French howitzer systems are now in the possession of the Russians. They were not captured. According to all reliable information, the howitzers were sold through an intermediary, which means the Ukrainian underworld, which is very, very big and very active. Interestingly, they were sold for $120,000 each. Now, the cost to the French government was 7 million euros, which means that these brand new French howitzer systems were sold to Russia for 2% of what it cost the French people to buy them. So it's just insane what's going on over there. The Javelin anti-tank missiles that the United States has been providing have been sold on the dark web, and they seem to go for somewhere around $30,000. Cost the U.S. government $240,000. So for about 12% of the original cost, you can buy these weapons and use them to knock down American airliners or to do all kinds of mischief. The Interpol is a very powerful international police agency. It functions basically for the Western world. And Jürgen Stock, who is the Secretary General of Interpol, has said that he's very fearful that these weapons that are going to Ukraine will be handed over to criminal organizations. The U.S. intelligence services have admitted that we do not know where the weapons we provide to Ukraine are going. We have absolutely no way of tracking them. And if you can remember what the mafia used to be in New York City, I mean, I'm sure they're still operating there, but when I was growing up, the mafia was incredibly powerful. And if you can imagine the Ukrainian underworld, they are like the mafia back when I was a little boy, and they were running around running liquor and prostitution and assassinating political officials and that kind of thing. This is the way that it operates in Ukraine. Very, very corrupt, and we are giving our most advanced weapons to those people. Now, I'm not saying that it's the Ukrainian government that is dealing in weapons, but it's high-placed, influential Ukrainians. And so I think we can reliably count on the fact that groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda will come into possession of advanced anti-air missiles capable of knocking down jet airliners at Dulles Airport, at Reagan National, at O'Hare, all over the nation. You can imagine if Al-Qaeda wanted to, they could acquire, 50 of these advanced anti-aircraft missiles, and in one day they could shut down civil air traffic across the world and throw the world into utter chaos. So we're doing this over a war that never should have happened, one that never would have happened had the United States not set out on a deliberate course to back them up to the wall to where they were forced into fighting Ukraine. So it's a shame, but that's the way that it is right now. Here's another interesting article from Ukraine. You may have heard reports that that Russia was they were somehow weaponizing their gas to Europe by cutting off the supply to Germany. Well, now it starts to become clear that what Russia has been saying all along is true. Now, the U.S. forced Germany to abandon the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was completely finished. All it needed was to throw a switch and it would have been operational. So that left Russia with one pipeline into Europe, and that's the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Well, here's the problem. It has to have maintenance like all different industrial machines. And so there's a gigantic turbine that powers the flow of gas through the pipeline. That turbine was sent to Canada to be refurbished and then replaced into service, pumping gas into Germany. Well, because the United States and NATO have decided that they're going to sanction everything going to Russia, the next thing that happened is we blocked Russia from getting the turbine. And so they could not put gas through to Germany. So it was not Russia that cut off gas to Germany. It was the United States through its sanctions policies that cut off the gas going to Germany. And so the next thing, Ukraine, of course, Ukraine knew what the truth was, despite all the Western propaganda. They knew that the turbine was being held up in Canada, and they publicly urged Canada not to return the power turbine to Russia. They wanted to block the flow of gas from Russia to Germany. They were hoping that Russia would be forced to send it on the pipeline through Ukraine, which is not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. But in any event, it's more of the insanity of the Ukraine war. It makes no sense. It is very destructive, and if we fall into a very deep, severe recession, one of the reasons is going to be because of the sanctions that we've imposed and because of the immense amount of wealth that we have dumped into a war that never needed to happen. Next topic we've got this morning. British Petroleum, BP, issues a very reliable statistical review of world energy. They do this each year, and the report is relied upon by U.S. government agencies, by various companies. It's considered to be quite authoritative. And it's interesting that 2 years ago, the report said that fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas were supplying 84% of the world's energy. 2 years later, after this monstrous push for renewables, the fossil fuels are still providing 84% of the world energy. And so right now, the renewables, which include the solar, the windmills, the corn liquor and the gas tanks from making alcohol from corn, and also from wood. From burning wood. A lot of people in the world still burn wood for heat. All of that combined is a total of 5% of the world's energy consumption. So it's tiny. It's a tiny, minuscule percentage. Anybody who believes that we're suddenly going to replace the 84% of energy with the 5% has got a screw loose, in my opinion. There's no indication it's going to happen. One interesting thing here, ExxonMobil is always the bad boy, the whipping boy for the Biden administration. And Biden is saying, well, how come these oil companies like ExxonMobil don't push down the price of oil? Fact of the matter is, ExxonMobil does not even produce 3% of the world's total oil. So they can't have any influence over the price of oil. It doesn't matter. If they cut their oil in half, it wouldn't make a difference in the price of oil. They just don't have that influence. It's set by the market, and as long as there's more demand than there is supply, then the prices go up. Okay, we have another article here, and it deals with China and their energy policy. Now, for a while, China had embraced this fad of renewable and solar and wind power and so forth. But very quickly, they've been jerked back into a sense of reality. China is now expanding its use of coal, according to oilprice.com, which is a very authoritative energy website. And what's happening is that the Chinese are looking, and President Xi Jinping told reporters during a trip to Inner Mongolia, which is their biggest coal-producing region, he said that China cannot depart from reality. It's rich in coal, it's poor in oil, and short of gas. So as the West becomes increasingly hostile towards China, China is saying, okay, we've got to get real about this. This is no time to play games with the latest energy fad. We've got to rely on coal. Coal, of course, is the most efficient, the most cost-efficient source of energy. It's more efficient than nuclear power, which has its advantages also. But coal is the most reliable and the most cost-efficient of all energy sources. Here's an interesting fact. Right now, there are 8,500 coal-powered power plants in the world. Only 232 of them are in the U.S. So if the U.S. were to shut down every coal-fired power plant in the country, just shut them down tomorrow, it really wouldn't make a blip on the screen. It would throw us into the most severe depression that you could imagine, but it wouldn't affect the output of energy produced by coal by any significant amount. I got a couple of late items here. You may have heard that the news media, the liberal media, is saying, "Oh, what a terrible thing that during the Trump administration, Mr. Comey and Mr. McCabe, IRS, FBI top agents, ones involved in many of the scandals generated against President Trump, that they were being investigated by the Internal Revenue Service." Well, it turns out there's a reason why they were flagged for investigation by the Internal Revenue Service. They were making $200,000 a year from their pay as top officials of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Suddenly, their income went from $200,000 to $2 million a year after they started generating up all of this effort to overthrow the Trump administration. So, what the mainstream media does not tell you is often the most important information. Yes, it's true. The Trump administration, IRS under the Trump administration, did flag Mr. Comey and Mr. McCabe for IRS audits, but it was not for some political retribution. It was because their income as civil servants increased tenfold. Now, how often has that happened in your family? Not often, I suspect.